So in this week's Property Marketing Monday, we are going to talk about tripods in property photography. Do you need to use them? What should you use them for, etc. Now, when I first started speaking on the property circuit about photography, I used to say that you don't have to use tripods for your property photography. And I was actually quite shocked about the strength of feeling that I got about that statement. And that really angered some people. And they said, no, you have to use tripods on every shoot, etc., etc. And, actually questioning our professionality by, saying that. So I wanted to do this video. I've been meaning to do this one for quite some time, but just got round to it now. So let's talk about tripods in property photography. First of all, do we in landlord photography use tripods on our shoots? Yes we do. Do we use them for every shot? No, we don't. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So tripods are a useful bit of kit. There's no doubt about that. And I was actually talking to a really experienced property photographer a little while ago, and I asked them the question, do they use a tripod? And they went, yeah, absolutely, for every shot. I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Why is that? And they said 2 reasons. One, they do mainly ambient light photography, and I'll be explaining what that is shortly. So you need a tripod for that. So I went, okay, that's fair enough. And what's the second reason? And well, it's what the clients expect to see, which was a really interesting point. So it wasn't because they felt it was necessary for every shot. It was just because they thought it was what the clients expected to see. So, for me, and why I say you don't have to use a tripod for every shot is because some you just don't need it. So, for example, flash photography. So, if you use flash photography in property photography, you absolutely can get away without using a tripod. Now, some people might tell you that by using flash, you're going to sort of wash out the colours, etc. Well, what my response is to that is you have to think about what is it you're going to use these photos for. If they're, say, in a magazine or a brochure, then ambient light photography, which is basically where you use natural light in the room to light the room. So you use a very slow exposure, and that's great. And for that, you absolutely need to use a tripod because you wouldn't be able to hold the camera still enough because you might have, say, a 10-second exposure. But if you're using these photos, for example, on the portals such as Spare Room, Rightmove, or any of the others, what we've found works best for our clients for either selling or renting their properties is super bright, super colourful photos. So actually, if you do wash out the colours a little bit, it seems to be fine, and you can fix it to a degree in editing anyway. But also as well, we pump up the colours and we do things so that those photos really stand out. So if you look at it from a purist perspective, we aren't representing a completely pure version of that room. We're making it brighter, we're making it more colourful, because we want their photos to stand out on the search results, on the listing. So when people see the thumbnail, they go, oh, that looks interesting, and they click on that one rather than their competitors. So that's why we do use flash photography without tripods in property photography. But also as well, we do use tripods, and we use them for a variety of things. So, for example, in a bathroom or kitchen, lots of shiny surfaces, there's cases where you can't use flash. So using a tripod, using the ambient light, that can work well. Also, for ambient light photography, I mentioned before, we don't do a huge amount of it, but it does give some really nice results, but it's not necessarily what our clients are looking for. And then there is HDR, which is high dynamic range, which what you do is you effectively take 3 photos. It's a bit like Little Red Riding Hood and the Porridge. You do one under, one over, and one about right. So you do one a bit overexposed, one a bit underexposed, and one perfect exposure. We use HDR photos for when there's windows involved, because it gives you a really nice effect. It gives you nice light in the room, but it doesn't blow out the windows, and nobody wants to see blown out windows in property photos. unless of course you're trying to hide something. So if you've got a lot of mess outside, then yes, you might want to blow out the windows. And for that we would absolutely use a tripod. So that's that scenario, and what you do, you get those 3 images, and some cameras will just create the HDR images for you. Other cameras, you'll just have to take the 3 photos and then create the HDR image in Lightroom or whatever editing software you're using. And there's also something called Ambient light, which is something that's becoming quite popular. And whereas with the HDR, you're merging or blending 3 photos together, which have just been normally created without a flash. With ambient light, you actually use flash and ambient light photography and merge those together, hence the name Ambient light. So they are the different styles of photography in property, and sure, there's other ways and other things that people do, but to me they're the main approaches. So as you can see, with a flash photography you can not use a tripod. And if you're doing that, quite often what we'll find is you need an ISO of say 200, depending on the strength of your flash. And we would use say an 8 or 9 f-stop with that. So not a particularly big depth of field, but it seems to work quite well. Also with that, things to be aware of is windows. How do you not blow out the windows? So it's really quite easy. So what you do is you take a photo of the room without the flash on, and you get the window right. So just take a picture so you've got the window in it and get the window right. And then once you've got the window right, you've got the settings for that, and my starting point is normally 1/80th for shutter speed, ISO 200, and aperture of say f9. And then once the window's right, you can then add in the flash to light up the room. And what will happen is the window won't be blown out and you'll get a really nice effect on the room. So that's property photography using flash and using a tripod. So you can do both, and what I would say is if you've got the skill sets to do it, use all of them. Use all of those methods to get the best shots. However, if you are new to property photography, I would say the easiest one to learn and requires the less kit and all the rest of it is the flash photography, because you don't necessarily then need to edit the photos afterwards if you don't want to, and you don't need the tripods. You do need a flash, and I would suggest you use something like a speedlit flash, and I can put a link to those in the description of this video. But other than that, you don't need a lot of kit. I wouldn't use the onboard flash though on the camera because they're normally not strong enough. So there we go. I'm going to keep this one fairly short, but as you can see, do you have to use a tripod in property photography? Well, yes you can, but absolutely you can get away without using a tripod, especially if you're just doing it for yourself and maybe your own portfolio, etc. That's it for this week's Property Marketing Monday. Hope you found that interesting, and we will see you next week.